Hello everyone and welcome to this short video series about groups. My name is Sebastian Strasser and I'm going to show you the basic features of groups. So this first video will be a short overview about the groups, what it is, how to use the graphical user interface and so on. So let's start here on GitHub. This is our repository where you can download groups, and this is also the right place to ask any questions or submit any bug reports and so on. So first of all, you have to install groups. We have an installation page with instructions for Microsoft Windows and also several Linux distributions. So here you can just follow these steps to install groups on your operating system of choice. And yeah, there's also a link to our documentation, which we'll deal later in this series, where you can find information on basic features, but also cookbooks to perform specific tasks, and also a description of all the classes and programs you find in groups. So after you have installed, I'll show you a quick overview of what is groups. So groups has both a command line application, which is groups itself, let's call it, and we have a graphical user interface. So all the logic is part of the command line application, and with the graphical user interface, you just create so-called config files, which tell the command line application what to do. So from the graphical user interface, you can also directly call the command line application and run the group script. And how does the user interface know which programs exist, what settings exist, and so on? This is done by an XML schema file. So the groups command line application can create a schema file. If you've downloaded groups from GitHub, you already have this file, and the GUI then parses this file to know which programs there are and which settings there exist. Okay, so let's start with the command line part. So if you have installed groups correctly, you can just call groups in the command line by entering groups or groups.exe if you're on Windows. And this is just a help text from groups. You can see there are several optional arguments, and in the end, the last argument is a config file. You can pass one or more config files to run a groups program. So for example, I can type groups 01. I have an example script prepared, which is called 01 groups example.xml. And if I run this, you can see this script just simulates a basic orbit, and that's it. So it goes by super quickly. So yeah, that's the basic principle of groups. It's just a command line application. However, as I mentioned earlier, there's also the graphical user interface, which looks like this. This will be your main interface for groups, because this will be the place where you usually create scripts. So you create the scripts which tell groups what to do. So I have here open my example script I just ran. On the left, we have a sidebar, which shows all the open files. There's also a list of programs, and an undo stack, which I will mention later. And you have a menu, of course. There are several features. When you first start the graphical user interface, you will probably be prompted to set up some default paths and files. So this menu will show up. Here you have to set the path to the schema file, which I mentioned earlier, which is usually in your groups directory. You can set a working directory, which is just the base directory where all your scripts start. But of course, you can use different directories when you save a script. And also you have to set the documentation directory. This is like this part, so it's a subfolder docs/html. And another feature you can use here is a template file. You can just use any group script as a template file. For example, here I have a groups template, which is this file here. And this template file, in this case, only contains global variables. You can imagine global variables just as global variables in any programming language. And here you could also add some programs. The nice thing about the groups template is I can set up any variables. For example, a very important variable is groups data dir, which is used as a default variable in several paths of our programs. Here you can set the path to the groups data dir you have hopefully downloaded from the FTP server. And you can also create any other variables. And if you have set this template file in settings, whenever you create a new script file, these variables will be auto-generated. So everything which is part of the template file will exist also in this file. So this is very convenient to set up some basic global variables you always need. But let's go back to the script we just ran. It is a very basic script. There is only one program, which is called simulate orbit. It has an output file. It has several input files. You define a time series, the sampling, and so on. You can set up several forces. So here you basically just tell the program what to do and which settings you want to use. I will go into these settings later in the next video. This is just an overview of how to use it. For example, you could also add another program, select any program you want, or you can change settings, you can add forces, and so on. So this is pretty straightforward and easy to use. This file, as you can see, is an XML file. So if I look at this file, you can see it's just the program we just saw, simulate orbits. It has the output file, it has the time series, and so on. It's just encoded as an XML file. Okay, and if you want to run this program, let's head to the undo stack, where we can just undo or redo all our changes. Let's go back to the initial state of the file. And if I now want to run this file, earlier I showed you can do it over the command line, but you can also hit the green triangle button and hit run, and also a command line window will open and run the script. Okay, and another important feature of groups is a help feature. So you can select any program and hit F1, and it will open the documentation in the browser if you set the path correctly. And here you have the documentation of the program simulate orbit. You can see a basic text what it does, and also a description of all the settings you can use. Okay, that's everything I wanted to show you in this first video. In our next video, we will create a basic, easy script so you can see the process of creating a script. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.